In the gleaming atrium of Elite National Bank, where sunlight filtered through towering glass panels to dance across polished marble floors etched with subtle gold veins, and holographic displays at teller stations flickered with real-time stock tickers and personalized wealth management ads, catering to an affluent clientele dressed in tailored suits and designer accessories. Dr. Elena Thompson stepped through the revolving doors with the quiet confidence of someone who had navigated far more treacherous waters than a routine loan application, her simple jeans hugging her frame modestly, while a soft gray sweater draped over her shoulders, a sleek black briefcase clutched in one hand containing meticulously prepared documents for a $3.5 million loan to establish urban tech incubators. Aimed at empowering underserved communities with coding bootcamps and startup resources, her understated appearance, a deliberate choice to blend in during audits, standing in stark contrast to the opulent surroundings where crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls and velvet rope barriers separated VIP consultation areas from the common lobby, the air scented with a faint mix of fresh coffee from the executive lounge and the metallic tang of high finance, and as she approached the reception desk, her footsteps echoed softly against the vast space, drawing the immediate attention of manager Harold Jenkins, a grizzled veteran of 25 years in banking whose sharp eyes, framed by wire-rimmed glasses, had long been trained to spot what he called red flags through a lens colored by years of denying loans to minority applicants. Based on vague gut feelings that often masked deeper biases, his internal monologue racing as he sized her up from behind his mahogany desk, thinking back to that one case a decade ago where he turned away a black entrepreneur for a small business loan only to learn later the man had pivoted to success elsewhere, a regret he buried under justifications like credit scores and collateral shortages. But today those old instincts flared, as Elena requested a private consultation without an appointment, her voice calm and articulate as she explained the purpose of her visit. Yet Harold's response was swift and dismissive. Leaning forward with a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes, "Ma'am, we'll need to verify a few things first. If you don't mind emptying your pockets and placing that briefcase on the counter for inspection," his words carrying across the lobby loud enough to turn heads among the scattered customers, a couple in business attire pausing their conversation about investment portfolios to glance over curiously, while teller Sofia Ramirez, a 26-year-old single mother sending remittances to her family in Mexico, froze behind her station, her mind torn between the fear of losing her job if she spoke up and the gnawing sense of wrongness as she recalled her own loan denial last year for a modest car purchase, despite solid employment history, debating internally whether to whisper a word to her supervisor or stay silent as Harold continued his interrogation, probing Elena about her real intentions with questions laced in condescension like, "Where exactly do you reside, because folks from certain neighborhoods rarely qualify for sums this large without substantial backing," his coded remarks hanging in the air like unspoken accusations. And security guard Liam Brooks, a former cop with 18 years on the force now moonlighting in private security, shifted uncomfortably near the entrance, his broad frame tensing as he vaguely recognized Elena from a banking compliance conference he'd attended 2 years prior where she'd spoken on fair lending practices, but the memory eluded him fully amid the rising tension, choosing to observe rather than intervene as Elena remained unflappable, her dark eyes steady as she declined an incoming call on her phone from FDIC Director Hale without so much as a glance at the screen, the vibration buzzing against her palm, while she countered Harold's assumptions with pointed inquiries, like, "Could you share the branch's approval rates for similar loans across different demographics? As I'm curious about your verification process," her words probing the cracks in his facade without raising her voice, interweaving in her mind flashbacks to her own career trajectory that had brought her here, starting as a community organizer in a red-lined neighborhood where her parents' mortgage application was denied. Despite steady jobs leading to years of renting in substandard housing that fueled her determination to climb the ranks, from law school on scholarships to a position as a federal auditor at the FDIC specializing in rooting out discriminatory practices, motivated by those early injustices that had shaped her unyielding commitment to equity. And as Harold persisted demanding extra scrutiny like a full background check before even reviewing her application, the lobby began to stir, with whispers turning to stares. An elderly patron named Mr. Dablablock, Hargrove adjusting his bifocals from a nearby leather armchair where he perused financial statements, his privileged background as a retired executive making him inclined to trust the bank's protocols without question, murmuring to himself that security measures were necessary in these uncertain times, while a teenage customer, Mia Lopez, waiting in line for a deposit, pulled out her phone, discreetly starting a live stream to her social circle. Initially just venting about the awkward scene, but quickly gaining traction as viewers tuned in, drawn by the unfolding drama, capturing Harold's escalating theatrics as he gestured dramatically toward Elena's briefcase, insisting on opening it publicly to ensure no fraudulent documents were inside, his voice booming across the space with phrases like, "We can't be too careful with applications of this magnitude, especially when the presentation doesn't match the ambition," the holographic displays nearby flickering indifferently with market updates as Elena complied, partially unzipping the case to reveal neatly bound proposals and financial statements, but holding back her federal credentials for the moment, her strategy honed from dozens of similar audits where premature revelation would skew authentic behaviors, and Sophia's internal conflict deepened as she overheard a colleague snicker about another one trying to game the system, biting her lip while considering an anonymous tip via the employee hotline, but hesitating over potential retaliation that could jeopardize her daughter's education fund, Liam's vague recollection nagging at him like a half-remembered name as he watched Elena decline another call, this time from a DOJ, contact the screen flashing briefly before she silenced it, her composure, a masterclass in restraint, as she pressed Harold on why her attire seemed to factor into his skepticism when the bank's policy emphasized merit-based evaluations, the question landing like a subtle challenge that made him bristle, defending his approach as standard procedure for high-value requests, though his track record of denying 78% of loans from black applicants compared to 15% for white ones whispered otherwise in the recesses of his conscience. And as the whispers in the lobby grew into a low hum, with Mr. Hargrove now openly staring and Mia's stream viewer count climbing past 500, with comments flooding in like, "Is this real discrimination happening live or just protocol?" The tension ratcheted up when Harold finally reached for his desk phone, announcing loudly that he had no choice but to involve authorities given the suspicious nature of the application, dialing what he thought was local police but escalating to FBI contacts for what he framed as potential financial fraud, his voice carrying triumphantly as sirens began to wail faintly in the distance approaching the bank. The crowd's attention fully captivated now, with phones emerging from pockets to record the spectacle, Elena's expression unchanging as she prepared for the next phase, knowing this was the precipice where true behaviors revealed themselves before the storm of revelation broke, the marble floors seeming colder underfoot as the first patrol car pulled up outside, its lights flashing through the glass facade like harbingers of the reckoning to come. As the sirens wailed closer to Elite National Bank's marble atrium, their flashing lights piercing through the glass facade like accusatory beacons that cast erratic shadows across the holographic displays and velvet barriers, the interpersonal tensions began to crackle like static electricity in the air, drawing the once passive crowd into a web of ethical quandaries where alliances formed and fractured in whispers and gestures, Harold Jenkins puffing his chest with renewed vigor as the police officers entered through the revolving doors, their badges glinting under the chandeliers while he gestured dramatically toward Dr. Elena Thompson, still seated calmly with her briefcase partially open. "Officers, this woman has submitted a highly suspicious loan application for millions without proper verification." And when questioned, she became evasive, citing some vague knowledge of our policies that frankly doesn't add up, his words laced with a performative outrage designed to rally support from the onlookers, but instead sparking a ripple of debates among them as elderly Mr. Hargrove rose from his armchair, clutching his financial statements like a shield, his voice booming in defense of the bank. "I've been a customer here for decades, and if the manager says there's a protocol, then by golly we should trust his judgment. These institutions don't stay elite by letting just anyone waltz in with big demands." His privileged stance rooted in a lifetime of seamless approvals for his own ventures. From real estate flips to yacht purchases, clashing sharply with the young couple nearby, a software engineer named Raj and his partner Lena, who huddled in hushed argument, Raj whispering, "This looks bad, why is he fixating on her clothes and neighborhood, it reeks of profiling, we should say something," but Lena pulling him back, replying, "Babe, think about our mortgage refinance pending here, rocking the boat, could tank our rates. Let's just observe for now." Their ethical dilemma mirroring the broader group pressure where fear of personal repercussions silenced potential allies, while teller Sophia Ramirez, behind her station, finally mustered the courage to act, subtly logging into the bank's internal app on her terminal to submit an anonymous tip about managerial bias, citing the uneven scrutiny she witnessed in past applications, including her own denied request for a home improvement loan, despite flawless payment history, her fingers trembling as she typed, knowing the risk to her position, but driven by memories of her immigrant parents facing similar barriers in accessing credit that kept them trapped in cycle of renting, and security guard Liam Brooks, edging closer to the scene, his mind racing to connect the dots on Elena's familiar face, now recalling a panel discussion at that conference where she'd dissected redlining's lingering effects with data-driven precision, the puzzle pieces falling into place but hesitation gripping him as he weighed loyalty to his employer against the nagging pull of justice. Meanwhile, Mia Lopez's live stream exploded in viewer count, surging past 200 as shares rippled through social networks, drawing virtual comments that polarized the digital audience, some echoing Harold's vigilance with posts like "Good on the manager for protecting assets from scams," while others decried the bias, typing furiously, "This is straight-up racism in action. How is this still happening? Boycott Elite National." The feedback loop amplifying the drama as Mia narrated breathlessly, "Y'all, the cops are here and he's doubling down accusing her of fraud without even looking at her papers. This is wild," prompting external reporters to get tipped off via direct messages, one local journalist from Channel 5 News already en route. After a viewer alert, and as the officers, Officer Patel, a seasoned veteran with a no-nonsense demeanor, and her partner, Officer Reyes, newer but sharp-eyed, approached Harold for details, Elena interjected smoothly officers before proceeding. "I'd like to point out that under the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, Section 1002.4 banks are prohibited from discriminatory inquiries based on appearance or assumed background. Perhaps Mr. Jenkins could explain why my application warrants such escalation when I've provided initial documentation," her strategic quoting of regulations flustering Harold into a more overt slip, as he retorted defensively, "Look, we've seen patterns with urban applicants posing higher risks. It's just statistics, not personal." The phrase, "urban applicants," landing like a verbal grenade that ignited further debates in the crowd, with Raj finally speaking up. "That's not statistics, that's stereotyping, and it violates federal guidelines," his voice cracking slightly under the pressure, but bolstered by Lena's nod of support, now that the tide seemed turning, while Mr. Hargrove countered gruffly, "Young man, you don't understand the realities of risk assessment. This isn't some social experiment, it's finance," the clash exposing hidden fissures in the group's unity, where socio-economic divides played out in real-time arguments, Sophia's anonymous tip pinging through to corporate compliance in the background, triggering a silent alert on some executive's dashboard far away, Liam finally murmuring to himself, "That's it, she was the keynote speaker at the FDIC summit last year on fair lending, her name's Thompson," the realization dawning but still holding back, as he texted a former colleague for confirmation, adding another layer of subplot to the unfolding chaos, and Harold, sensing the mood shift, redirected at Elena with demands for immediate proof of funds or else the officers would have to intervene, but she delayed artfully by placing a discreet call to her team whispering audit confirmation needed stat the line connecting to her assistant who relayed in code that backup protocols were engaged, all while the stream's virtual chorus grew louder with comments now, including legal experts chiming in. This could be a lawsuit waiting to happen under ECOA violations and activists tagging civil rights groups. The digital amplification turning a local incident into a brewing storm as news vans pulled up outside their cameras setting up for live shots based on the viral feed. Officer Patel raising an eyebrow at Harold's insistence on fraud without evidence, suggesting perhaps we review the documents first, sir, to de-escalate, but Harold waving her off, claiming his experience trumped procedure, leading to Reyes pulling him aside for a private word about potential overreach, the group pressure mounting as more customers joined the fray, one middle-aged woman sharing her own story of denied credit despite qualifications whispering to Lena, "I stayed quiet last time but not today," forming impromptu alliances that fractured the initial consensus around Harold's authority. Mia's phone buzzing with notifications as the viewer count hit 500 shares cascading to influencers who amplified with reposts like "Witness Modern Redlining Live." This bank needs accountability, the ethical quandaries deepening for everyone involved, as Sophia received a covert thumbs up from a colleague who'd seen her tip submission, encouraging her silent rebellion, Liam finally stepping forward to murmur to Officer Patel, "I think there's more to this woman than meets the eye. Check her credentials closely." His intervention a turning point in the subplot of Reluctant Heroes, and as Elena hung up her call with a subtle nod, the arriving FBI agents, summoned erroneously by Harold's overzealous report, entered the atrium, their suits crisp and badges authoritative, the storm gathering intensity with the crowd leaning in collectively breath, held amid the swirling debates and digital echoes, the holographic displays flickering on indifferently as the pressure cooker of human dynamics threatened to boil over into irreversible confrontation. As the FBI agents burst through the revolving doors of Elite National Bank's atrium, their authoritative presence slicing through the charged atmosphere like a blade through fog, the holographic displays flickering in silent witness to the impending unveiling of truths long buried under layers of institutional complacency. Dr. Elena Thompson rose from her seat with deliberate grace, her briefcase now fully open to reveal a cascade of federal credentials gleaming under the chandeliers like badges of unassailable power. "Officers and agents, before you proceed with Mr. Jenkins' misguided accusations, allow me to clarify my position as senior auditor for the FDIC, tasked with investigating this branch's documented patterns of discriminatory lending practices under the guise of a standard loan application to observe authentic behaviors," her voice resonating with the quiet thunder of someone who had orchestrated this moment from the shadows, her tablet springing to life, with interactive data visuals projecting holographic charts that illuminated the stark disparities, a 72% denial rate for black borrowers, compared to a mere 14% for white applicants with comparable credit profiles. The numbers hovering in mid-air like damning indictments that silenced the crowd's murmurs. Widened eyes across the lobby, Harold Jenkins staggering back against his desk, his face paling to the color of the marble floors, as the agents, upon verifying her badge with quick scans of their devices, straightened into crisp salutes. "Ma'am, Special Agent Torres here. At your service, we were briefed on potential audit support, but had no idea the call was entangled in the operation itself," the salute rippling through the officers like a wave of deference that left the onlookers gasping in collective shock. Mia Lopez's live stream exploding past 15,000 viewers with comments flooding like a digital torrent. "She's FDIC. This manager just called the feds on a Fed epic takedown unfolding live," and in the chaos that ensued, Harold's phone erupted with an urgent call from the bank's board chair, his voice crackling through the speaker. "Jenkins, what in God's name have you done? Our compliance team is blowing up with alerts. You've exposed us to federal sanctions effective immediately. Your terminated security. Escort him out." Liam Brooks stepping forward to comply, his earlier hesitation now replaced by a grim satisfaction as he guided the sputtering former manager toward the exit, Sofia Ramirez emerging from behind her station with tears of vindication as Elena turned to her. "Miss Ramirez, your anonymous tip was instrumental in corroborating our data. You're promoted to interim manager, starting now. Oversee the transition with a focus on equitable practices, the immediate upheaval sending shockwaves through the institution as corporate attorneys scrambled via video links from headquarters pleading for leniency. But Elena outlining remediation with surgical precision. First, a $10 million restitution fund for all denied applicants over the past 3 years, dispersed with interest and priority reapprovals, audited by independent civil rights firms to ensure no further barriers. Second, deployment of AI bias detection systems integrated into every loan processing, terminal flagging, discriminatory language, or uneven scrutiny. In real time, with alerts routed directly to FDIC overseers, preventing future slips, like Harold's overt profiling. Third, mandatory retraining for all staff, using virtual reality simulations that immerse participants in scenarios of exclusion, drawing from real complaints to foster empathy and policy adherence, with certification required quarterly. Face automatic suspension, the crowd absorbing these details with a mix of awe and reflection as Mr. Hargrove shuffled forward, his earlier defense crumbling into apology. "Ma'am, I see now how my silence contributed to this mess. How can an old-timer like me make amends?" Elena responding graciously by supporting community workshops where customers like you share experiences to humanize the data. It starts with listening and advocating in your circles, the broader institutional shifts cascading outward as news crews outside broadcasted live with headlines like FDIC, Sting exposes bank bias manager fired on spot, the viral stream propelling the story to national trending status, prompting congressional leaders to announce immediate hearings on lending equity, with Elena slated to testify on scalable reforms. And in the quieter aftermath, as the lobby emptied of agents and onlookers, Elena lingered by a window overlooking the city skyline, her reflections weaving through anecdotes of reformed lives like the ex-banker she once audited, who now ran non-profit financial literacy programs after his own downfall, or the communities revitalized by inclusive funding that turned blighted blocks into innovation. Hubs her journey from those early days of redlining scars, fueling a career dedicated not to punishment, but to structural healing, where authority served as a bridge to equity rather than a barrier, the economic benefits manifesting in projections showing diverse lending portfolios yielding 18% lower default rates and higher community reinvestment returns, proving that justice wasn't just moral but profitable. Sofia already brainstorming inclusivity events like free credit workshops and partnerships with local HBCUs to recruit talent, diversifying the staff beyond token hires into genuine representation. Mia's activism blossoming as she fielded interview requests from media outlets, crediting the stream for amplifying voices that might otherwise echo unheard, her followers swelling into a movement for everyday accountability. Liam finding renewed purpose in leading security trainings on de-escalation and bias recognition, his military background channeled into protective allyship rather than passive enforcement. Even Harold, in his forced retirement, grappling with mandated counseling that peeled back layers of ingrained prejudice, though his path to redemption remained uncertain, a symbol of how personal growth often followed public reckoning. The nationwide audits triggered by this incident, sweeping through 500 banks, imposing similar AI safeguards and funds totaling over $500 million in restitution, empowering thousands of entrepreneurs from marginalized backgrounds to launch ventures that boosted local economies by billions. In projected growth, congressional pushes crystallizing into new legislation, like the Equity in Lending Act, mandating annual diversity reports and whistleblower protections for staff like Sofia, Elena's role elevating to national oversight, where she spearheaded a task force on fintech inclusion, ensuring emerging digital banks avoided the pitfalls of their traditional counterparts. Her epilogue thoughts turning inspirational as she envisioned a future where such unveilings became obsolete, replaced by proactive cultures of fairness, and wrapping the narrative with calls for viewer engagement. Document your encounters, challenge assumptions in your workplaces and communities. Because one act of courage can ripple into reforms that uplift generations, turning moments of confrontation into milestones of progress. The atrium's holographic displays now symbolizing not just wealth, but the transparent flow of opportunity for all.